Just a quick heads up, uploads on this channel might be a little slower than normal for the next couple months or so. The reason is because I'm working really hard on one specific video that is going to be the most comprehensive, detailed project I've ever done on this channel. Therefore, I've decided to prioritize it while making smaller, less important videos on the side. That way I still have something coming out on occasion, but I can focus most of my time on this other project. It's really no secret on this channel that I'm a big fan of racing games, and in particular I love sim racers. I've spent thousands of hours in the genre, and feel like I've learned a lot about myself, cars, racing, and even video games from that experience. I'm aware that most of my audience isn't particularly interested in sim racers, which is why I don't make more videos on the subject. But I also think that's a bit of a shame, because when you break it down, sim racers are pretty similar to a lot of other genres people really enjoy. It's really not that large of a leap from a min-maxing RPG to simulation racer, but I think the subject matter obfuscates that for many. That's why I personally think everyone should try a sim racer out at some point. I think people should give them a genuine effort because they have a lot of value to offer both as games and as general experiences. And if there was one sim racer that encapsulates the beauty of the genre the most, while also being the most friendly to a wide audience, it would definitely be Gran Turismo. So this is why I think everyone should try Gran Turismo. Firstly, we should get some of the more practical and aesthetic things out of the way. Gran Turismo is generally extremely respectful of the wallets of their players. If my count is correct, Gran Turismo Sport has introduced 16 new tracks, with 31 layouts beyond what was in the base game at launch, as well as 166 cars since launch as free updates. And though you can use real money to buy these cars individually, the cars are all priced exactly how they would be for any previous GT title, meaning you're not asked to grind for 5 million credits just to get the Isle of Man Time Attack Subaru, just to convince you to spend real money on it instead. In essence, all of this content is completely free, as are the rest of the usual changes and updates, and the hundreds of extra scapes backdrops for the photo mode. There's only one paid DLC you can't get in any other way in Gran Turismo Sport, and it's $6. The game is also absolutely gorgeous, with arguably a stronger implementation of HDR than any other game, and precision data for light sources from the real world used to give wildly different feels to the lighting depending on the situation. It's a marvel to look at sometimes, which for graphics snobs can be really filling. The series also generally has an exceptional UI aesthetic, which helps players feel comfortable with the plethora of complex options and modes you can partake in. The soothing menu music, subtle sound effects, artistic presentation, and the ease of use goes a long way. In a genre that's often known for having very cluttered, confusing, and utilitarian interface designs, it's nice that they put so much effort into this. Artist types will find a ton to dig into as well, since you can take fantastic photography using the Scapes mode I talked about in a previous video of mine you can find linked in the description. But beyond that, the game's livery editor is also extremely powerful, and can even be used to import vector art to put on your cars, if you prefer using more professional art tools instead of solely the in-game editor. Gran Turismo is also well known for caring just as much, if not more, about automotive history than racing. Most of the games offer extensive descriptions for how each and every car in the game came to be, and they also often include museum-style educational resources related to automotive history in general. There's usually a lot to sink your teeth into if you simply just want to know where a specific country or manufacturer might have been when a certain car was first produced, or even just about the oddities of the industry as a whole. This celebration of automotive history is also usually reflected in the car selection. Some hardcore fans complain about the rosters being full of cars that aren't actually great for racing, but the idea is that they want to give you the option to experience as wide of a catalog of vehicles as possible, including maybe even the old beater you own in real life. Ever wonder what it might be like if you strapped a big turbo and racing tires to it, or how it would compete stock with a friend's equally junky vehicle? Well, Gran Turismo is usually a place to do that safely and cheaply. Gran Turismo's most powerful design choice, though, is easily the inclusion of its fantastic learning tools, where most other sim racers are completely serious, to the point that they assume you're already a dedicated fan of the genre and offer basically no help outside of assist options. Gran Turismo has a wide-leaning legacy of fantastic learning tools to get people up to speed, so to speak. I genuinely think the sim racing genre would have really struggled to catch on past a niche audience if it wasn't for the early Gran Turismo games educating people so well. I know I certainly wouldn't have kept playing had it not helped me to understand the intricacies of racing. These tools for learning are everywhere, whether it's cone markers for braking points and corner apexes, extended descriptions of how different types of drivetrains will feel, coffee break minigames that test specific skills, assists that allow you to focus on one specific part of a car's feel without getting bogged down by something else that you're not really ready for yet, missions that test different racing concepts and teach you how to tackle individual tracks, or, my favorite, the license tests. These tests are all about teaching you the fundamentals of high-speed driving, one step at a time, from top to bottom. They too include generous descriptions and even videos highlighting how you should be tackling a specific test. Gran Turismo does everything it can to teach you its language of play, so that you'll keep playing, instead of drop it after playing around with a couple of cars and getting bored. Gran Turismo isn't the most realistic simulator out there. It's still very much a sim, no matter what any racing snob might argue, but its goal is to be accommodating as well. It doesn't expect you to have a racing setup that's as expensive as a real car to have a good time, but it also punishes ignoring the fundamentals. It wants you to learn how to play it. This is usually the highest hurdle for people to overcome, particularly if they refuse to take part in the license tests and other modes designed to educate them. And I think part of the problem is that people are looking at the game more like it's just an arcade racer set to a super high realistic difficulty or something, rather than what it really is, a CarPG. Fundamentally, what most simulation racers are RPGs where your characters and builds happen to be cars and setups, and instead of violent combat, you partake in races. Think of it this way: in your average RPG, you usually have a character like Geralt from The Witcher 3, maybe a suite of characters like a Final Fantasy party, or even collect from a massive set of characters like Suikoden or Pokémon. And then you set about customizing these characters for the express purpose of tackling challenges that lie ahead. There are usually multiple ways to tackle a challenge, and you can tailor characters to be excellent at whatever skill set you need in the moment, while trying to minimize their weaknesses. You'll buy equipment as upgrades, maybe tweak abilities, or even get as granular as putting dozens of individual stat points into one of 15 different stats or whatever, to absolutely min-max the build you want them to utilize. Persistence and growth is key to it feeling rewarding, and it needs to feel like your tweaks matter. Sometimes you'll need to do things like stay at an inn to revitalize your characters, or re-roll a character to get a better foothold on a particularly difficult encounter. The ultimate goal is to rise up well past the strength of your opponents and take on the final threat to come out on top. Well, Gran Turismo is really no different. In Gran Turismo, you collect from a massive set of cars, and then set about customizing these cars for the express purpose of tackling challenges that lie ahead. There are usually multiple ways to tackle a challenge, and you can tailor cars to be excellent at whatever skill sets you need in the moment, while trying to minimize your weaknesses. You'll buy parts as upgrades, maybe tweak tires and aerodynamics, or even get as granular as adjusting dozens of individual values across a large multitude of parts to absolutely min-max the road feel you want the car to have. Persistence and growth is key to it feeling rewarding, and it needs to feel like your tweaks matter. Sometimes you'll need to do things like change your oil to gain back some lost horsepower, or make another spec sheet for an existing car to get a better foothold on a particularly difficult race. The ultimate goal is to rise up well past the driving prowess of your opponents and take on the final series to come out on top. Similar to many sports game career modes, fundamentally Gran Turismo, and most sim racers really, offer an experience similar to a CRPG, where complex systems and a plethora of character choices inform how you play and tackle challenges. It's systemic in nature, and though initially it might just seem like getting faster is about doing better, oftentimes it can also be just as much about understanding the strengths and weaknesses of different cars in your garage, and fine-tuning the spec sheet so that it drives in a way that's advantageous to your particular skill set. There are many different driving styles, and when combined with the many different types of cars and the many different racing disciplines, there's always a different angle you can improve from by using strategy and skill in conjunction with each other. Racing is about being creative. The reason I think people really should give Gran Turismo a chance where they otherwise might not is because when you recontextualize it as an RPG that happens to be about cars and racing instead of knights and monsters, it becomes abundantly clear that they're kind of one and the same. Deep lore in the museum, a high skill/strategy ceiling with tons of options for player choice, tons of options for aesthetic expression and customization to make the experience your own, and an emphasis on bettering yourself through effort and clever planning. Gran Turismo really isn't that different from other games when you break it down, and I think a lot more people would fall in love with it and the genre it represents if they would stop thinking about it as a car game and started thinking about it as an RPG about cars. But what do you guys think? How many of you have tried to pick up a simulation racer? Did you succeed? If not, what do you think held you back, and would you try it again if you found the chance? Sound off in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.